Thank you for tuning in to the community conversation brought to you by Prototype Training System, home of CrossFit Prototype. Sam and I are back with another nutrition episode to help provide you with some education and strategies to better your nutrition while still having a social life. There's a lot of misinformation on nutrition, and we aim to provide you with some clarity. Today, what we want to discuss is weekends versus the weekday, how those behaviors might look during the week and how those behaviors might look on the weekend and how they may be impacting your goals. So to start, I guess we could maybe just ask the audience a question, something that maybe you guys could think about as a little bit is, what do your weekends look like versus how you eat during the week? Are they drastically different? Or is there a lot of social settings or peer pressure and social environments that make your nutrition drastically different on the weekends than they do during the week? Or another question is, do we look at the weekends differently than we do during the week, in the sense of, as long as I can make it be good Monday through Friday, I can be a little bit relaxed on the weekends. And that kind of, if you rewind back to maybe our cheat day episode, might be something similar like that, where we're, kind of giving ourselves permission to go a little bit further than we know that we'd want to go, based off of, what we need to do to adhere to our goals and to feel our best. So I guess I'll ask Sam, I'll ask you a question right now is, are your weekends and weekdays like drastically different? And it's okay if they're not. You might be a little bit more social on the weekends than you are during the week, but how are your like behaviors, even if you're not in the same exact environment that you are during the week?
Yeah, for me personally, I would say they're pretty similar, aside from like the time I eat, probably my meals. Whereas like during the week, and you're probably the same way. We're like waking up at 3:30 in the morning. And so like we'll eat something at that hour of the day. And so everything is kind of just shifted earlier. Whereas on the weekends, like I'll eat pretty much the same meals, just shifted not at 3:30 in the morning, but instead like 6 or 7 a.m. is my first meal versus like 3:30 being my first meal of the day. But aside from that, like if I'm not going out to like a party or like a wedding or like any of the things that are big events, like I eat almost the same exact thing on weekdays and weekends. And that's because I eat pretty much anything I want to any day of the week. And I've like made that my lifestyle habit. But if I do go out to like I just had a wedding this past weekend, right? So like I had different foods probably than I normally do, because like there was a pizza truck there. So I had more pizza than I do on like a regular weekday. But like my breakfast was the same. My lunch was the same. It was just one meal that changed a little bit. And that's just like based around the food that I have available. So for me personally, no, weekdays and weekends aren't all that different. If there's a big event, then things change a little bit, but not a huge drastic change. Now, is it similar for you, John?
It's similar, but I would probably say that I eat more on the weekends. So eating more. So this is what I want everyone that's listening to understand, is consuming more calories does not mean that you are on a certain day of the week or on the weekends. It means that you're cheating on your diet or anything like that. Okay. This is very good to understand, because the mindset behind the behavior is huge. So for me on the weekends, I might eat a little bit more because Lily and I might have like pancakes for breakfast on Sunday once in a while or something like that, which is going to be a little bit more calories than what I would typically have. But I'm not going to go ahead and have my next meal be necessarily any different than how I'd have my normal meal. I'm not going to have like a lighter lunch to try to make up for breakfast. I might eat a little bit more calories on the weekend from time to time, but there's not like an all or nothing type of approach to that. If we feel guilty or we try to go ahead and, maybe it's during the week, we're like, okay, I wasn't good on the weekend. Now during the week, being overly depriving and things like that, that's pretty different than how you're approaching your week versus your weekend. So speaking from personal experience, I eat more calories on the weekend, but it's not like a a few thousand calories more. You know, it might be, you know, maybe I have like, maybe I have a couple beers, like maybe I have a beer on Friday and Saturday, or shit, maybe I have a couple, you know, accumulating drinks, depends on what it is, but it's not a, well, I will get back on track type of mindset. If we have that get back on track mindset, then really like we got to stop looking at like our nutrition as it's going to be this like this perfect thing, because as soon as you like go anywhere, you know, off of that, where you kind of look at as like the perfect way of eating, you're probably going to go ahead and have some guilt associated with it, which will, you know, oftentimes causes us to justify having that second or third or fourth. Maybe it's beer, maybe it's, you know, maybe it's that, you know, extra dessert, or maybe it's just having a second plate at the buffet when normally that wouldn't be what you would do. So that was kind of a tangent on, do I eat more of it? Yeah, I eat more on the weekends, but I think like understanding like the mindset behind it. What do you like think about that, Tim?
No, I think that's a perfect point to bring up of like, yeah, like life happens and like we have to be prepared for life. Like if you go into nutrition being like, I have to eat this food at this time and only like eat this certain food group, but I can't have this, and like you expect your life to work around your food, then no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to stick to that. And then like what I see a lot of times is someone will go in with that plan and then something happens with life and then they blame themselves for not doing the thing that they're supposed to do. When in actuality, like they haven't planned for life to be happening, right? Like it would be ridiculous to say like you're going to turn down every single social invitation because you're trying to follow a really strict meal plan. Or like not ever let yourself have like a beer on the weekend because you're trying to follow this really strict meal plan. Like it's just not sustainable. Like I'm sure that's what you want to do if you want to get into like bigger competitions, but that's not what you should do if you're trying to just live your life. And so it's a good point to bring up of like if you indulge a little bit more on the weekend, like you eat something that you hadn't intended to, or you have something that's more calorie dense than you've been having during the week, like that's just life. And once you kind of learn to find that balance of like you have a little more on the weekends, and that's probably because your body needs a little more calories. Like you probably don't have as much during the week because like you might not need as much, like because you're sitting at your desk and like you're less active than you are on a weekend when you like go out and hike for fun, or you're like running around with the kids. So like the body's naturally adjusting, but you have to be prepared for those social events. And like if something comes up and you have more than you intended to, like again, that's just life. Like life happens, and like no one's expecting you to follow this like very strict regimented diet. And I think we've talked about before, like that's how you kind of get yourself in a bad situation of if you don't give yourself the freedom to eat all the foods that you want, to have the drinks that you want, then you see more often that it's like a swing of like binging and then restricting and binging and restricting. And we have these cheat days. And then in the end, it doesn't get you to your goals. So I think, yeah, that's a really valid point, important point to bring up of, you know, weekends people probably do eat more calories because, well, it's not fun to be antisocial.
Right. And it's like, God forbid you treat yourself once in a while. Like, but you know, like treating yourself once in a while, and also having the lifestyle where every single day is, I'm going to have, you know, a beer or two after dinner. And then, you know, it's, you got to kind of look at things like, well, how consistent are you? Consistent doesn't mean that, you know, you had a vegetable with every single meal for the rest of your entire life. Consistent is, what does a normal diet look like for you? And on the weekends, is it drastically different? Is your quality of food way lower, or are you eating way more than you usually do because, I don't know, maybe it's because you're hungrier because you're under eating during the week? Or is your food choice in the weekend that you know, you don't eat anything and then you eat like an entire pizza? Like what are you like, what's like your normal like diet? Like, do you eat 3 meals on the weekends? Do you eat 3 meals during the week? Is on the weekend like, you know, drastically different? Or, you know, is it, you know, pretty much the same formula, whether you're eating at a restaurant or not? Let's say, for example, you're making a meal at your house, and let's say that normally you would have, chicken or turkey or shrimp, and then you go to a restaurant and you get a hamburger. There's nothing wrong with that by any means. And, even if you got a hamburger and French fries, there's nothing wrong with having that. That being said, if you're eating that meal and then you're like, okay, I'm being bad, I'm going to start my diet over on Monday, and you let that roll over into the next day and you justify, eating to the point of discomfort because you kind of have this black and white mentality when it comes to your nutrition. That's like something that you would want to work on, is having that, having a better relationship with food in general, that you don't have to have guilt associated with having that hamburger. Or, if it is just slightly different than what you normally do, if you have that donut from Rocco's, like, is that something that is going to make that entire day, off for you? Or is it, okay, I enjoyed having this donut, and, let's say that's what you had for breakfast that day. That's probably not what you normally do, but if it was, like, that doesn't mean that lunch or your next meal has to be like, you got to go get Chick-fil-A because I had a donut for breakfast, so today's a wash. Like, if we kind of get out of like looking at things like that, then, we'll probably find that we're a lot more consistent on the weekends and during the week, because you incorporate some of those things in there that, might be a little bit higher calorie. It might eat a little bit more calories on the weekend, but there's a big difference between having a little bit more and then also just like abusing your body.
Yeah, because I think at the end of it, like, that's exactly what it is. Like, what are you doing for your body? Like, at the end of the day, you still want to be eating in a way that like brings you closer to good health, right? Like, so you don't want to be consistently eating McDonald's every single day of your life. Like, with that said, like, doesn't mean that McDonald's is bad. It just means that it's going to have less nutrients than like a home cooked meal, you know? I could tell you, I couldn't even count the number of times when I was younger and my mom would like stop at McDonald's and we'd get like a 20-piece chicken nugget on our way from like soccer to gymnastics practice, right? Because it's like, we're kids, it's fast, it's like some food, we're like getting energy in our system. The thing is though, like, that wasn't an everyday thing. That was just like maybe once a week when like we had no time. And then like I would go home to like a fresh cooked meal of like some pasta and some like not breaded and fried chicken and some vegetables, And so like, when you do that and like that you can like have those things and accept that they're just a part of your like whole healthy diet, and you're eating foods that primarily will bring you closer to health, it's okay to have foods that like you might have previously deemed like bad or unhealthy, because realistically all foods fit, and I'm a super big proponent of that. I think you are as well. Of like, you should be able to eat anything you want and there's no guilt or no label associated with it. It's just food.
Right. And then you can also look at too, like, if we're talking about, do your weekends differ drastically from your weekday? During the week, you have some form of a routine, right? Like, most people have some form of a morning routine. They have what's going on in the middle of the day, which is typically what's going on at work or whatever their errands are that they have to run. They have a nighttime routine. So do the weekends drastically differ from the week? Is that, do we have any type of routine on the weekend? That doesn't mean that sometimes you don't know if you have to take your kid to soccer practice or not, but do you eat breakfast? Like, do you wake up? Do you, maybe do that little bit of meal prep that you do to get yourself set for the week? Do you have like some form of, familiar, I can't even
Familiarity.
say it. Familiar. Oh my God, I can't say this word.
What word are you looking for?
Familiarity. How do you say it?
Familiarity.
Say it again.
Familiarity.
Say it one more time.
Is that the word you're looking for?
I can't pronounce it. I just found a word that I don't know how to pronounce. Familiar. All right, just learned something new today. So when someone asks me like, what'd you learn today? I'd be like, I can't say the word familiarity.
You're pretty close. Good
enough. Yeah, but anyways, like I was saying, like, is the weekends, do you have any type of, do you have a pattern on the weekend? Yeah, I'll just have you fill in the word. I think you guys know what I'm saying now. But yeah, like, do you have things on the weekends that, you know, form your routine like you would on the weekend? Um, Sometimes we have like all these events and stuff going on that, you know, that might be different, but you also got to maybe look at what is your, what's your, like, when you're in a different environment, let's say you're totally out of what your normal routine would be. How do you behave in a completely different environment? So let's say you're someone that travels for work and you're all over the place all the time. You don't really have that, you know, that consistent environment. Maybe you're not always in your kitchen and stuff like that. Is your behavior when you're not in your element, is it that it's okay, like, you know, whatever, like, type of mentality, like every time you go to a restaurant you have to go ahead and have 2 or 3 drinks or whatnot? And that, I'm talking about people that do this all the time, because if you want to have consistency and you're someone that eats out all the time, going with that alcohol or going with that highly palatable food all the time is the opposite of what you want to do if your goal is that you want to be able to maintain a healthy weight or potentially lose weight. So we have to like have our consistent behaviors, whether we're eating at home or if we're eating out. Now, again, let me specify again, doing things all the time versus doing things once in a while that are a little bit different with, you know, what you would typically pick for your meal are very different. If your lifestyle is constantly like in that eating at a restaurant or not knowing where you're going to be, you have business meetings that you have to do all the time, we have to go ahead and still have some form of routine with our nutrition and what that would look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about like what a really easy way to go ahead and just think about like what a good meal should look like is there's really 3 things that should be in every meal. For the most part, right? You should always probably have a vegetable on your plate, right? That's where we're going to get our nutrients. It's where we're going to feel more satiated having. It's where we're going to get our dietary fiber. We should have some protein on our plate, right? And we should have some carbohydrates and some dietary fat coming from somewhere. We have a well-rounded plate, right? Where we have a really good idea of how to be able to pinpoint those things. That is the protein. Okay, I don't know what that is because it's got 16 different cream sauces in it and I have no idea what it is, and it's deep fried and battered. That's what we call a calorie bomb. So if that's what you're having all the time, we got to go ahead and we got to start thinking about like, how do we make our plates look a little bit easier to identify? And that's going to help you be consistent even when you're out of your normal environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. Of like finding a way to like be consistent with their choices. And I feel like the easiest way to think about it is to just be like, this is my lifestyle. Like, this is who I am. I'm someone who chooses this kind of food when I'm out, right? Like, my persona is like, I'm a dietitian. I'm a CrossFit coach. Like, my life is this like health and fitness field. Same for you, John. Of like, so when we go out, like, we choose foods that, one, sound appealing to us, but two, are just packed with nutrients, right? And so like if I go out and I get a burger and fries, I'm like, okay, I'm like iron deficient. I need this burger because I don't get enough red meat in my day. It's like, this is going to help me so that I'm not iron deficient. You know what I mean? And so like when you look at choices as like, this is part of who I am, and like I'm making this choice not just because I want to lose weight, not just because I want to do this. It's like, because this is the choice I would normally make, then like it becomes a lot easier when that is just part of your persona to make those choices on a regular basis.
Right. Like I love getting like buffalo chicken mac and cheese at like restaurants and stuff like that. But if I did that every day, it it wouldn't be the best diet. Let's just say that. But there's nothing wrong with doing that type of stuff sometimes. So I guess the point that we're trying to say is your weekends aren't always going to look identical, but we should still be able to have consistency on the weekends as well. And depending on what your goal is, your choices should align with your goal. That doesn't mean deprive yourself on the weekends and say no to everything, but it's, you still want to be mindful and you still want to go ahead and feel good and not feel deprived or low energy because you're not allowing yourself. Almost think about like in work, right? Like in your career, if you get all these assignments, you're gonna eventually get burnt out if you never go ahead and allow yourself to take a break. That break doesn't need to be a trip to Florida though. You know what I mean? Like that can be like you understand what I'm saying is that if you don't have any type of balance in your life between being able to have some of the foods that you enjoy, they give you some pleasure, and then also like understanding what are the foods that are going to be more nourishing, fewer in calories, things that we also enjoy. And that's where we have like that balance. Like, you know what? Like, I really love asparagus with olive oil on it. That's a vegetable that's a staple in my diet. I also like to have cream and sugar in my coffee. Like, there's, in my opinion, there's nothing there's nothing wrong with either one of those or better than either one of those if it allows you to stay consistent with your choices. If you're like, I want something sweet, but I never have something sweet, I'm gonna eat an entire pint of Ben and Jerry's. Well, why does that have to be the behavior instead of being able to go ahead and just have some Ben and Jerry's, right?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. The more you can accept that every food is just food, then the easier it is to do all of this stuff.
Right.
Because you just have a little bit of everything when you want it. And if you have a more calorie dense meal, it's not make or break it. I think a lot of our clients always are looking to lose weight. And I feel like just by the nature of what we do here, it's like a lot of people come to see us because they want to lose weight. It's like you didn't put on however many pounds in 2 days. So you're not going to lose 2 pounds in however many days. You know what I mean? Like, so to have like a different or like a fluctuation in your life or to change things up a little bit on the weekend, it's not going to drastically change your weight, no matter how much or how little you eat on a weekend.
I mean, and honestly, like if we kind of look at like from, our own personal dieting history, for some people saying no to the French fries and getting the broccoli is a win. And for some people saying yes to the French fries and just being okay with that, that's a win, right? It's like forming that relationship with food that you can go ahead and be like, no, I'm good. And you can also be, you know what, that sounds good. And like being able to like say either one of those and not have, either one of those like totally drastically impact your emotions or your next meal or, anything that's going on. You don't have like being able to, if you want to have a slice of pizza or if you don't want to have a slice of pizza, you shouldn't have to feel like, am I making the right choice saying yes or saying no to this? What do you want? If you would rather get that salad, that is totally fine. But if you feel like you have to have that salad in order to go ahead and get to your goals, then I don't want to say you're wrong, but you're like, you can have both. Okay. And both are in context acceptable.
Yes, exactly. And both can fit into a very healthy diet overall. It's like, you got to look at big picture. Like, you have pizza one night, you have salad the next night. One night you're not good, one night you're not bad. You're just eating food. At the end of the day, like, you eat well, you sleep well, you exercise regularly, and you drink enough water, and you like remove as much stress in your life, like those 5 things, then like you are living a healthy life.
Right.
And that's really what it all boils down to. So like, you can have some flexibility on a regular basis.
Yeah, like if you were to like stab your neighbor with a knife, like that's bad. Like that's bad. Like I wouldn't do that.
It's so dark, so quick. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like if you look at things like that, like you're not doing anything that's inherently bad by having something that is a little bit higher in calories, right? The choice is yours, and it's just gotta also like just align with what your goals are. Like I'll say that again, like depending on what your goals are is gonna probably be whether or not having 3 slices of pizza. If you're trying to lose, lose a little bit of weight, then, you might want to go ahead and be like, is that choice going to make me feel hungry after eating that meal for the amount of calories that I'm going to have? And that's where you kind of got to look at things too, is like, if I have 2 slices of pizza and a salad, I'm going to feel great. If I have 3 or 4 slices of pizza, I might potentially still be hungry, but also like, right, like having that balance of like, if you're going to have something that's less nutritious, my best recommendation is to have something that's really nutritious and filling. That way you don't feel like you need to have like an absurd amount of it. Like if I were to just have pizza, I'd probably want to have 3 or 4 slices. But if I were to have 2 slices of pizza, which is appropriate, and have like some vegetables with that, I'm not going to feel hungry afterwards. Right. So having that like balance of the two, and also understanding, having a better understanding of, like, again, like what is your usual type of behavior. If it's that you're traveling for work, like you mentioned earlier, and that's like an everyday type of thing, sometimes saying no is okay, and sometimes saying yes is okay.
Exactly. It's all about the balance.
Yep.
Now,
Cool.
John, you have anything else like on this topic that you wanted to say or recap?
I think the weekends is where a lot of people try to de-stress, and that's why the the consumption can be higher, and it can be much different than the week, because during the week when you're busy at work and things like that, sometimes people don't have like much of an appetite, or they're just so busy that they're eating through their meal and things like that. So I think that, a takeaway could be during your week is also, trying to implement some things that don't make you feel like on the weekends, like you have to completely let loose. You know what I mean? And like we mentioned that earlier, is like having like some of those luxuries whenever you want versus just having them like reserved for the weekend. But emotional eating is like a tricky thing to overcome if we're like relying on food or alcohol to go ahead and feel like we're having fun on the weekends. I think we got to go ahead and look at what are we chasing. Typically we're not like just chasing like super palatable food. We're trying to go ahead and feel a certain way. We're trying to feel relief. We're trying to feel something like that. So implementing other things, which this is like a whole nother episode, is like implementing things into your lifestyle that are going to replace the behavior of having whatever it is as a de-stressor. Some of us need to go for a walk on the weekends and not sit down all day, and like adding in some of those types of things that can go ahead and make us relieve a little bit of stress or whatever's going on in your life, have a different outlet than food. But that's like a totally different topic that we'll discuss in the future.
I feel like we found our new topic for next week.
It came to mind that it's not as simple as like on the weekends we're eating too much. There's usually like something that's going, that's kind of driving the behavior to do that. So we're going to talk strategies and how to be mindful and how to, work through some of that stuff in a future episode.
I'm so glad you brought that up. This should be our topic next week.
Yeah.
Like what to do when you turn to food for stress, because some people's stress responses is turning to food. Some people's stress responses is not eating. We should talk about that, because that can have a huge effect on someone's diet.
Sure. Let's talk about it next week.
I think that's a good plan. Glad we figured that one out. Glad everyone got to hear the thought process behind all that. Let's recap. Do your weekends look different than your weekdays? What do you have to say about it, John?
Do mine?
I mean, just in general, let's recap what we talked about.
Recap what we talked about is, is your lifestyle drastically different on the weekends? Is your eating behaviors different on the weekends than it is during the week? do you have different routines with how you structure your meals? Maybe it's whether you have, X amount of meals during the day, or if you eat at different times of the day. Do you snack more on the weekends? Do you drink more on the weekends? Like, how drastic is your diet? We also mentioned too, just from my personal experience, is that I eat more on the weekends, but that doesn't, but there's no guilt or anything associated with it. So it's also like, how's your relationship with food? And when you get out of your environment, is your relationship with food a trigger for how much you consume, or how you go about your next meal?
Beautifully said. So with
Yep.
that, I think like if we've said anything that's like really hit home for you, or we ask those questions and you're like, wow, I think I need to think about this, please reach out. Please come talk to us. We want to talk nutrition with anyone and everyone all the time. We are more than happy to help, and that is exactly what we're here for. Also, if you have ideas for future podcasts, including the one that we just talked about, let us know. We want to talk about things that are of interest to you and that will help you be healthier and happier. So please reach out for any reason. We are just happy that you are here and listening and have made it this far in the podcast. So with that said, thanks so much and have a wonderful day. We will see you soon.